everyone.
Welcome to our show,
Conversations with
Brown Girls. So guys, you know when you have that person who comes up to you and they're trying to describe someone who they assume you know because you're both people of color?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you know, like, and it's always so funny because they're always like, oh yeah, I bet she has like short hair, or you know,
or very
she's
curly hair.
Or like, remember like the middle school stuff, high school?
No,
like,
she's really good at basketball.
her hips don't lie.
Dance.
Mm-hmm.
She has, and then even here they're like, they never say the obvious. They never say something that we so strongly identify with within our culture.
It's
like,
so funny.
You were saying the other day that you would be offended if they don't mention your race.
Well, yeah, because like, I mean, that's kind of like, by you not admitting that I'm a black person, you're kind of just erasing like my culture.
Right, rather than saying, like, you know how sometimes they're like, oh, I think she's an ethos.
Or mesca.
Here they tell
that your friends are in it. They say, I think she hangs out with those girls in mesca. She might go to
And then sometimes they're like, why can't I get into Harambe House?
Oh yeah, like, or sometimes I don't even know, like, they're like, yeah, that place behind the library,
Yeah,
I just know I
that's
can't
true.
swipe there. Like, I see people go in, like my friends go in there, and they go during the daytime and during the nighttime, but I can't go in there.
And I don't understand why I don't have access. Like, I should have access to everything on campus.
I pay full tuition.
Yeah.
Oh, not the full tuition people.
Yeah. No.
But you know, the interesting thing is, like, the thing we should really be talking about, instead of all this, like, oh, yeah, why can't I go into people's spaces? It's like, why don't certain groups have spaces at all? You know? It's like
Agreed.
ridiculous.
Okay, guys, it's up.
Okay, so
I heard you were talking about space.
yeah, you know.
How much space we don't have here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can we say how it was so difficult for us to find a space to have this conversation too?
Actually,
Oh my God.
Like, if we had a Latina house, I could have been like, hey, do y'all want to meet up at Latina house?
Oh,
Didn't there used to be a Latina house?
Oh, there was actually a Latina house.
Oh, no.
In fact, I believe it was it was a shared space. It wasn't just Latina house, but it was called La Casa, and it was shared by students of Mezcla and like other students of Latino descent with Hillel, Newman Catholic, and I think those were the only three groups that shared it. But it was called La Casa, and it was where Gray Lot is now, so that parking lot behind the Science Center.
Wow.
That's where it was,
Oh,
and
that's
then it was
great.
eventually called Gray House, right?
Yeah.
So it was officially called Gray House, known as La Casa, and I think it was either in 79 or 80, the summer, it burned down.
Wow.
Mysteriously.
Oh no.
So, yeah, so students came back after the summer and they were like, our house is gone. And they were like, it burnt down, y'all. However, the story that they don't often tell, because we've definitely inquired about this, asking why we don't have a space, right? The story they don't often tell is that it was actually rebuilt after they burnt it down. And they referred to it as Gray House, but they never gave it back to the Latina students.
Wow.
So it existed, still the same space, Gray House on Gray, what is now Gray Lot. But they used it for a while to have housing for employees that have to stay on campus during events like blizzards and stuff, and they couldn't go home. But then they stopped using it for that too, and then it just kind of fell into disrepair. But there are alums who remember seeing Gray House, like recent alums, like 09, 08,
Wow.
and Gray House is still there.
So
Is it
crazy.
still there?
It's not there anymore.
And so now that's just.
Oh, so great,
So
just
it's kind
replacing
of
the
a-
parking lot.
Yeah.
No, that's better.
You know,
I think it's much better.
Rid of
Yeah,
a space.
because so they actively got rid of a space. Just
Oh,
like there was an Asian American house.
Right, I
too.
do remember that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's-
And then it got taken away, right? Because obviously we want to integrate. I mean, like, the thing is, it's funny because, like, I actually had a student ask me that. They were like, you know, I don't understand why you want spaces in the first place, because isn't it like, don't you want to be like, isn't that the whole point? Like, you know, you had segregated housing, don't you want to be like living with everyone? Like, if you want to live with like people of your own race, why don't you just block with each other? And I was just like,
That's
you
wrong.
don't.
Yeah,
so you're wrong.
I mean, I understand where that's coming from, because I think it comes from this perspective that, you know, just physical presence is enough to make everything better, right?
Yeah.
So that's what the admissions office and the institution in general feeds us.
Mhm.
They tell us, oh, just recruiting more students of color will make this school better. And that's true to an extent. Like, it's always great to have more people
Yeah,
like
it's
you,
great.
right? It's great, but just bringing up admissions numbers is just giving Wellesley more faces for their
It
for
does.
sure.
Yeah.
And it also makes people feel they're like, it's a diverse community and stuff
But then
like that.
you get here and you're sorely disappointed, right? So like if
Definitely.
you have all of these, if you know, it's more than just wanting to hang out with other students of color,
Yeah.
other members of your race. It's
About
about
safe
having safe
spaces,
spaces.
yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's what they think, that we just like to like hang out and party all the time. Since obviously, because like whenever I mention like the events ethos, that's all anyone can remember is like the fact that we throw a party. But if we only throw one party, like I think this year, one party.
Even the thing about these spaces is that people are welcome to come.
Right.
Like there are open
Yeah.
meetings, there are open programs that
There's a
we share
million
with the
programs in
spaces.
Harambe every semester.
Yes.
Like I can think of some amazing programs that have happened this semester alone, and they're open to the entire community.
Yeah.
Because it's an administrative space, it's an administrative building.
Right,
And
yeah.
you will always in
And
addition to a
the
safe space.
Department of Wellesley
Definitely.
College. It is not
Exactly.
just a house.
Exactly, but
It's
it
for
is also a
resources
safe
and all
space,
those
and that's
things.
important, is that you can have spaces that function in different ways, right? But I think, yeah, I've heard that argument a lot too. I've heard the argument that it's selfish and entitled to
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
resources. I think that's
I don't think
Hilarious.
that is. Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
that is
actually.
ridiculous, yeah.
Well, I know like Coco was actually saying we should like draw like the map
Yeah,
that you're
mapping
talking
it
about.
out.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking in terms of creating a presentation just to show people where on campus these spaces could exist. There's a lot of spaces. We have living rooms, we have just like areas, we have the multicultural space in buildings.
Oh gosh.
We should actually create a map and just talk about the spaces where these resources can be located,
Mhm.
where cultural auras can like feel defined in the space, and we should actually put it on an interactive map of some way
Yeah.
just to show it.
And you know, people always talk about, well, not people, but the institution of Wellesley College always talks about our peer institutions and what kind of spaces, how we are up to par with our
Mhm.
peer institutions.
Or we're trying to be, but like.
Yeah, like, but can you talk about how there's a beautiful mural Latino center at the bottom of MIT Student Center? We don't have anything of that kind.
There's also a whole Latino house at Mount Holyoke. And it's not
Exactly.
just, I think this ties into the politics of physical presence and space. Like physical space is so important to be able to have like a space in terms of like having a voice on this campus, feeling like you're part of a community and feeling like you have a home base, right? So like, it's kind of like having your own room, but in a much bigger and more communal way. A
Yeah.
space you know you can go do homework and stuff. I think it is super politicized, but I think it's also just about a personal sense of comfort, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous because at our peer institutions, like they always like to call it, almost all of our peer institutions have
Every single
have
college
separate
around
spaces.
here.
And I think
For multiple cultural auras.
exactly, and I think a huge thing too is that the institution often tries to pit us against each other, which
Oh,
is a tactic
that's the worst. Like,
of institutional, hierarchies,
Yeah.
etc., to pit marginalized groups against each other and to feed us, this discourse that we are all competing for resources, when that's just in reality untrue, right? So there can be a Harambe house, and there can be a Latino house, and there can be an Asian American house. There can be all of these different houses, and no one is going to sit and think, oh, like now, for example, no one's sitting and thinking, oh, why is a Harambe house? Like, why do they get a house and we don't? No, people are thinking, wow, it's awesome, I want one too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And no one, I think that we're told to believe that we can't have something because another group wants it or because another group already has it. And I think that's just like a way to divide us and to keep us from building solidarity.
And to keep us complacent with where we are politically right now, like all the auras on campus. We were definitely talking about this yesterday. Like, I think the administration creates these strategies to maybe it's not completely intentional, but it's to make everybody okay with how we are and think that we're doing well and that we're being progressive when in reality we're not at all.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's and also it's interesting because when you move on from just physical spaces, people are constantly talking about I know the letter you wrote, the ethnic studies letter, and then I had someone who I don't know why this person thought I was the appropriate person to come up, that I would be okay with listening to them talk about it, bash it, and they were just yeah. I also don't understand why people want ethnic studies, you have history and you can learn, and it's funny, it's and I'm just it's so funny because
everyone's history is written
the white
by
supremacist narrative of US history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like we all have the time, like like the 8-8 thing. Like you're telling me, like a friend, like I have friends who like can't even like they'll go to professors. They work and they have to work, and like a lot of us have to work. And it's usually a lot of people of color or like lower income people who have to work. Like, and then like they'll go to like their professors, and the professors will be like, oh well, if you can just like quit that job, you could be able to do well in my class. And it's like, well, maybe if I had like ethnic studies, I wouldn't have to be like reading up on my own history, and then plus working, and then plus studying for your class, like.
And I think also just to comment on the letter and on ethnic studies in general, the letter and like the students that have mobilized around it, we're not advocating for an ethnic studies department because that kind of space can be harmful as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you read about like, the ethnic studies department at UC Berkeley, for example, a lot of scholars have said that it's become very ghettoized, right? So it's become this department in this space where it's like majority students of color and faculty of color, but it's completely underfunded, under-resourced, under-celebrated. So it becomes this separate, and it's physically separate from a lot of other departments, right? So you have like this isolation and you have this completely underfunded program, and that's not what we're advocating. We're advocating for more incorporation of ethnic studies, of all of these studies, of African American studies, Asian American studies, the Chicano Latino studies, in our curriculum in general, right? So it's revitalizing it and also giving us concrete opportunities to learn our history and being able to say, I'm a Chicano Latino studies minor, or I even hopefully one day I'm a Chicano Latino studies major, right? So it's not, you don't need like an ethnic studies department because that can be super problematic, but you can find those spaces and we need those spaces in order to survive.
We do, and we also need and it's just kind of sad because instead of having when we talk about professors, like instead of having one professor who is like that professor that you're like, yeah, this professor is like so like great for learning about like Latina studies, but like you should have like professors who are like more than just one. Like we should have like many professors of color and professors from these different backgrounds because we need this even just for mentorship. Like
right, and to even say that Wellesley is a microcosm of America, right? Like we end coalition building and the purpose of coalition building, even within students and on a long solidarity, like there's so much more we can do together, and I think being able to support that through the curriculum helps us mentally. Having that space helps us physically, helps us emotionally. Being a balanced person in this community could do so much more for the general student body. Like, you bring us here, but then it stops.
Right, exactly. And it's like, if we want to talk about the multicultural requirement that we have here, and the ways in which having more access to ethnic studies courses would really just benefit the entire campus. It just really would, and it would, something that we tried to write in the letter, we tried to bring out in the letter was that, this is an opportunity for Wellesley to make a commitment to us as future leaders, right? They keep talking about making us leaders and making us, people who will go out and make a difference in the world. Well, in order to do that, we need to know about our own histories. We need to know about our histories in relation to each other and in relation to the power dynamics at play and how we participate in those or how we don't, right? So, and I think that that's really important for anyone, anywhere to learn. And so I just understand that. I hear that all the time, people being like, but you have history, you have a month.
And it's so funny. I know.
You have a month.
I don't know what they
Where's
were trying
White
to do.
History Month, though?
Wait, no,
Where's
no,
White History Month?
no, White History Month. It's so funny because
Was that every month?
It's because I was like, when I was coming here, really in Texas, I heard crazy stuff like that all the time. People would be like, where's White History Month? Like my PWI, my predominantly white student, people would be like, where's White History Month? And I would just be like, ha ha ha, and brush it off. And then I came here, and then Wellesley was like, oh, we're such a diverse place. So I was like, I am so excited. Came here, people were like, where's White History Month? They're like, I don't understand why we have a Black History Month. And I was like, are you serious? And honestly, it's sometimes I don't even feel like Black History Month is really it's for me, but it's also just for everyone. It's the one time you can really come. There's so much programming, and they're like, "Where's White History Month?" I'm like, I know,
I just don't understand. They don't realize all of their history is in the textbooks. And honestly, I don't feel like everything is completely correct, and the history of marginalized populations that are in textbooks are not completely correct. So when we try and take a month to just talk about the things that we actually need to highlight and maybe have been, shaded, really learn about them in depth or in correct manners, and then they want to like throw that down and say, you know, you don't
Right.
need that. It's already in the textbook. It's already explained. It's really not.
Like Wellesley has an opportunity. We have such a strong community of Black and Latina students on campus that
And
like
Asian American.
and
And
Asian
Asian
American.
Americans.
Like there's so much diversity
Yeah.
on this campus that if they want to really support us, we should be able to critically feel comfortable in critically analyzing readings and literature from our cultures, from our backgrounds, from our parents' backgrounds. Like we grew up, some of us grew up here, some of us didn't grow up here. Like there's so much of a mixture here, and being able to have this study would support us and our allies and the other communities of color on this campus.
Yeah. and
Yeah.
I think, oh, sorry.
No, I think it's also interesting how people are always like, I won't even mention word, but I'm sure y'all know, like, windy quiet. Like, when people mention stuff like, you know, like, well, like, on this campus, as like a straight white woman, like, I feel like I'm, like, the minority, and, like, y'all the majority, and I think y'all should, like, respect that, because, like, you know what it's like to be a minority, so you should, like, respect, like, you know, like, me feeling like a minority, and I'm like, but you're actually, like, you're still the majority. Like, I don't know why
We're
you
the majority
think
here.
you're still the majority
We're the
here.
majority when we leave.
I don't know why. Where you got what numbers are you looking at? Because I definitely am pretty sure. Yeah. Wait, Larry,
We're in that space.
we're the
Yeah.
majority. Like, I guess then we should already have like all this like houses and ethnic studies and
Right.
stuff. Like, yeah, gosh, you should have everything.
Let's say the gauntlet is thrown, right?
And in addition to that, I think, so why do people resist things like ethnic studies, right? They resist
Exactly.
it because it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's uncomfortable, and
It
I
does.
completely
Yeah, I
understand.
do.
It's so hard to confront your privilege. It's
Oh my gosh,
really
yeah.
hard. It's one of the hardest things that we do, right? But it's something we should all have to do. And I think it's something that I've gone through, and that we can each understand that although we may be, you know, marginalized in certain respects, you know, power is relational and it changes. And our access to privilege changes given the situation, right? So I think that it really makes people uncomfortable to hear oppression, because it implies that there's an oppressor.
and they
that it
always
might be
believe
them.
them. Yeah, they all. Yeah.
And the thing is that I think having more access to ethnic studies and to courses, you know, that address these issues of marginalization and power and oppression makes it easier to talk about it, because you have a language and you can step back and critically examine, you know, okay, there's a difference between me as, you know, this as an individual and a system of like whiteness, and an oppressive system of whiteness, right? And it helps you see that how as an individual you're perpetuating that, and you're benefiting from it, but at the same time it doesn't make you an inherently bad person. And I think that these courses allow people to do that in a special way, and that I think that's another reason why it would benefit all of us, right? Like, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, they should just do better.
Yeah, do better.
Wellesley sí se puede.
Yes.
Yeah.